Hey, welcome to the show tonight, everyone. We are talking about the five desires. Woo!
But we're only going over four of them.
Three of them, because we did two last week. Those were, of course, the desire to know and the desire for power. So we're going to talk
Mhm.
more tonight. This is a class in meditation, in heart rhythm meditation. It's a method that comes out of Sufism. My name is Dr. Asatar Bear, and this is my co-teacher, Leah Schaefer.
Welcome, everybody. We're happy you're here.
So, there's a correspondence between these five desires and the elements, right? So, you know,
Yes.
Sufism talks about these fundamental kinds of energy and correlates them with the elements. And, it's a kind of an ancient device for talking about metaphor for talking about energy, right? So the four
Yeah.
elements are air, fire, water, and earth. And the point of talking about these, or just because we're being general, we're not being specific, like, oh, this is what you desire, right? It's more like, here's some categories for basic categories for desire, and it's
Mhm.
a tool of self-examination, self-knowledge, right? Because you can see, what do I relate to? What motivates me, right? I mean, this
Mhm.
is the desire is incredibly motivating, right? I mean, like, nothing
Yes.
beats desire for money, for
Yes.
what makes us tick, what makes us do things. I mean,
Mhm.
desire, right? So we've got to examine that in order to understand ourselves, and especially when we're talking about our hearts. And Sufism is the path of the heart, right? So we want to explore what is desire and how does that help us grow and develop and become who we really are, unfold our potential.
Yeah, beautifully said, Asatar. This is Dr. Asatar Bear with us this evening, and I'm the co-host, Leah Schaefer.
Right.
We're both co-hosts. We're both co-facilitators. Um, but yeah, I just think it's such an interesting topic in general, because a lot of the mainstream culture will emphasize the practices of indifference and detachment. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it's one of the more prominent things that are emphasized: renunciation, indifference, detachment. But that's not the whole picture. And so I think it's really important that we embrace ourselves and our humanity, because without ourself, the one creation does not have an instrument to work through.
Yeah.
And these desires are not just our desires, but the desire of life itself to experience itself in all of its faculties.
Right.
Um, and we can see, like, through our existence, the four different elements all around us, right? And how many, there's an infinite level of variety that can come out of these four elements, really, if we're just thinking on the physical terms.
Right.
If we're just thinking on the physical terms, there's like this huge variety that of life that can be, created from them. And yet at the same time, they have very specific qualities to them, like to make them so that they are identifiable, like we can identify them. And so it's like one of those tests online where you're like, what's my spirit animal? you answer
Hmm.
you answer like eight different questions, and they're like, it's a wolf. So so this is like, for yourself, it's a personality test, it's a character test. And there's no wrong answer. And in fact, the way that life wants to live through you and your own strengths, your own characteristics, both can encourage you to be your highest version of yourself, but also can really help us to understand where's our weaknesses as well. And so, anyway, so we hope we find it as fascinating as we do, as we cover it
Yeah.
this evening.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, if we have the desire to know, and we have the desire for power, right? These are the ones that correspond with air and with fire. And some of us are very motivated by the desire to know things, right? Like, think about when something is unknown, where it's a mystery, right? How motivating that is. Or the
Yes.
desire to be able to do something, to achieve something, right? This is power, right? Um,
Yes.
and so the next one we'll talk about is the desire for happiness.
Yes.
And what's
It
interesting to me about this, it's very fundamental, right? And that how it can often take us in a very different direction, right? Like if you're interested in happiness, you can see how okay that doesn't necessarily go along with the desire for power, right? I mean,
mhm,
accumulating power is work, right? And
mhm,
that might actually take away from your happiness at times, right? Like,
mhm.
it's hard,
Yeah, you said this last week, and I think it's a fascinating insight. What comes up for me is the different archetypes presented in the Lord of the Rings movie, which is such a funny thing to bring up in this show. But there's, in that movie, there's the hobbits, right? And the hobbits are very much in this line of happiness. They're happy,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And versus the I was thinking about the what are they called? The dwarfs, and they're just seeking out more and more gold.
Right. Right.
And then it brings them like a different happiness, but it's nowhere near the happiness of the hobbits, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's like a really nice, like archetypal look at these two different ways of being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Totally.
and if you think about the hobbits, it's like what are their kind of fundamental things? What are they exuding? And it's all about relationship, and it's all about coming together, being together, having food, a lot of food.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the same thing. That's the same thing that we find with happiness itself, is that it's very much connected to relationship, and it's very much connected to the energy of love. It's
Mm,
connected to the water element.
mm. One of the things I think about when we talk about relationships and we talk about love, and absolutely right, these things are very connected to our sense of happiness. Um, one of the things I think about is just how this is all around us, and that how often it's ourselves that's putting up the barrier, ourselves that's
100%.
pushing away others,
Yep.
or we're like, okay, well, we want this, but we don't want that, and
Yeah.
we want to pick and choose. We want, because um, there's all these things that that come along with a relationship that don't feel necessarily positive, right? And it's sort of all part of it, right? I mean, like, and we want to say, oh yes, well, we only want the positive, right? We don't want any of these things, and this is not necessarily real, right? But the point of all this, like since we're talking about meditation, right? How do we work with this in ourselves so that
Mhm.
we can experience that in its kind of purest form, right? Can we do
Mhm.
that? Like, not that that means we'll never be interested in relationships, right? Like just like finding a sense of power on an inner level doesn't mean you never try to do anything externally, right? Like it's
Yeah.
more about being whole, right? And if you give away your wholeness to external things, well, you're giving away a lot, right? Because we have a
Mhm.
lot less control over the external world than we do over ourselves, of course, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorite quotes from Hazrat Nayakhan is there's like a love stream that's available to everyone all times, and the person who will allow this love stream to flow through them continually, regardless of the conditions, no matter how difficult the conditions of life become, will have a happiness that truly belongs to them. And this is, I find, the most fundamental thing. Speaking on like when we're in relationships, it gets messy. It doesn't matter if it's a relationship with a family or a love romance or a business partner or whatever it might be. Like, they get messy at some certain point, and the tendency is to kind of shut down or shut off. Or we can self-sabotage because on a fundamental level, we don't believe that we're worthy of happiness. And
Mm,
so there's like this kind of like there can be a self-sabotage, or there can be like a throwing it all out kind of mentality. And we have to know, and this is one of the gifts of meditation, like even if somebody hurts me, I have to know how to reopen my heart to the love stream.
Mm,
Even if I don't believe I'm worthy of love or I'm afraid of that, I'm afraid of abandonment, I have to reopen my heart to this love stream.
mm,
Because without the internal love stream flowing, there's no way I'll drive everybody away or whatever. I'll be so pessimistic that I shut myself away.
yeah.
So it's like that's to me that's like the love reopening the love stream is the way that I can really have some form of influence in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so if we just go make sure that we cover all these, then the next fundamental desire, the desire for peace, right? So,
Mhm.
and associated with the earth element. And this is interesting. I also think of this one with the hobbits, right? Because
Right.
they like to stay in the Shire, right? They live underground in their hobbit holes, right? They don't like adventures, it's very rare hobbit that likes to go on adventures. Like, again, if you want knowledge, if you want power, okay, adventures, right? I mean, like, good,
Mhm.
do new things and you'll learn new things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you want peace, it's not necessarily, right, all about new things. It's not all necessarily,
Mm.
there's different energies that lead to these desires, right? But let's just admit also that we all have, to varying degrees, these desires, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I don't think there's anyone who doesn't want that, right? Like, even if you're a person who's very tuned into adventure, you're gonna want peace some of the time, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to be bothered some of the time, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the last one of these five is a kind of one that holds them all, right? And Hazrat Khan talks about the desire to live life, to experience life, right? And in all of its richness and fullness, to have the opportunity to want and achieve all of these different things. So those are the five desires, right? The
Desire
desire
to
to know,
live.
the desire for power, happiness, peace, and to live. Um,
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
such a beautiful teaching, and I just I find it really touching when I first absorbed this teaching years ago. It just has so much to kind of impart on this, um, on a bigger level, or at least that's how I responded to it.
Mhm. I just wanted to know what did I actually want, you know what I mean? Like, there is something really amazing about knowing what you want.
Yeah,
Like, do you know what I mean? Because then it orients you. You're like, "Oh, okay, that's what I actually want," and
yeah.
there's all this other noise. This
Well,
is what I actually want.
I really appreciate what you said earlier, that our desires aren't just us, right? It's not just a personal desire. It is the desire of the universe coming through us, right?
Mhm,
That
mhm,
if you take this cosmology as the Sufis do, right, that say God is all, right? God is not something totally transcendent, right? God is that, but God
mhm,
is everything that exists also, right? Every being that exists, every thought and feeling that exists, every energy that exists. Like, wow, right? So, okay, well, if desire
mhm,
is energy, and a very powerful energy, right? I mean, think about how powerful desire is in our hearts, right? Um,
mhm,
well, that's part of God. That's part of the one being, right? Um, what does that mean? What kind of responsibility does that charge us with, right?
mhm,
And when we think about our desires over time and how they are connected to our fulfillment, our unfoldment, um,
mhm,
that's a very sacred kind of energy there, right? Um, if we really go deeply into it, right, really explore it on it, energetic and spiritual kind of level. Um, we've got a couple of comments here. Let's
mhm.
see. Uh, I'm going to do a drinking game where I take a shot every time Asatar opens his eyes during meditation. Hmm. That seems like it would be rather dull. You'd have a drink or two, perhaps, each time.
That's hilarious.
You'd be pretty much sober, I think.
Pretty much sober.
Uh, and here's our dear friend Akbar Kadus. Good to see you. We're not Buddhists. Our goal is not to become desireless. I only have 48,396 desires. Well done, sir. That's it.
AQ, good job. Nice job counting. Did you count those on your beads? Um,
Very true.
well, we should probably meditate.
Let's
Um, let's meditate. So, okay, me and AQ will meditate, and then some of you will play a drinking game. Um,
No, I'm
but
gonna have
maybe
my
try
eyes closed the whole time. Well,
maybe maybe try to maybe try to drink spirit and see if you can't find some ecstasy there,
mm,
or some some intoxication through the sacred wine of spirit itself. Closing your eyes or softening your gaze and finding your meditation posture. And so the posture is such a big part of the meditation because it's showing your commitment. You can definitely be sitting in a cross-legged position, but it's easier for most of us to sit in a chair like an Egyptian pharaoh. They're always depicted in chairs without any shoes on, and their knees are lower than their hips, and their hands are usually down on their leg, palm down. But palm down is going to be giving more energy out. Palm up would be receiving more energy. You can rest your wrists on your thighs in a way where your elbows are right underneath of your shoulders. Again, knees being lower than the hips is going to be one of the most important aspects because that's going to allow you to breathe more deeply. Having a slight pelvic tilt forward will allow your vertebrae to stack on themselves more easily. And then gently broadening your collarbones and lifting the very back of your skull slightly so you bow your chin in towards your own heart. So what this does is it lines your bones up in a way that allows your muscles to relax as much as possible while still being in an upright position. It also gives you that ability again to breathe deeply. So begin to breathe as deep as you can, letting your breath go toward your low belly. And you can even allow your muscles, your low abdomen to expand as you inhale so that you can start to really know what it's like to have full breath. Your exhalation is organic for the most part, but then because it's your diaphragm muscle going back to its relaxed position, but we hold stagnation in our lungs all the time. So you want to breathe all the way out and push yourself. This is also so important for achieving your desires. So at the end of your exhalation, give everything you have. Use your core, your strong abdomen muscles to push the air all the way out and see how much more you actually have to give, using that momentum, that force toward reaching for your desires, even if you're not exactly sure what they are yet. There's something about reaching for something truly and fully that will bring more life into you. It gives more room for more life to come in. And your job as the master of your own domain is to breathe that life and direct it into the depths of your being, all the way to the base of your spine, into your low abdomen. These are muscles that we are warming up. You are increasing your lung capacity. So, especially this first part of the meditation, you want to work. It's really popular now, call it breath work, right? Like that's a very popular term these days because it is very much you're working the muscles from within. So let yourself breathe more fully than you're used to, increasing your capacity to hold all that you will be holding as you pursue and achieve the desires in your heart. And try to feel your breath as energy moving through your body. So you're not just sucking oxygen into your nose, like you are feeling your breath as prana, as energy. And try to feel it moving through your torso, through to the depths of you, in other words, through your whole body. Bringing more and more life through in order to kind of wash out all the nonsense, all the chaos, all the nonsense, just like kind of washing it all out and through. And also to start to energize yourself, renew yourself. Now, it's really common for meditation practitioners to use ujjayi breath, where they make a small constriction in the back of their throat in order to breathe more deeply. If you are doing that, I'd like to ask you to drop it because you want to learn how to make your breath powerful and subtle at the same time. The ujjayi breath helps you become more conscious of your breath, but it's really actually not necessary. And I want you to really learn how to breathe to your fullest capacities into your depths simply through your own consciousness and keeping your breath so powerful, so big, that you start to magnify the subtle awareness of the subtle energies as you're moving them on your own breathing. Having true self power is the ability to pursue your desires, hold them. And by having a full but subtle breath, you start to learn how to attune with your own center, the core of your being, and how to make room for accomplishing and embodying all the things you truly want and need to create, to fulfill. I think about it like the coals at the bottom of a fire. I think about my ability to be empowered in myself, empowered enough in myself to pursue my own desires, whatever they might be, empowered enough in myself that I hold my power, that I feel the power within the core of my being, and feeling the power within the core of your being is like holding the hot coals at the bottom of a fire. They ember and the fire is blue. And there's immense, intense heat there versus the top of the fire, which is flailing out everywhere, is actually you can run your hand right over it and it doesn't burn you. This is part of the reason you want to have a full, deep, but silent and subtle breath. You want to cultivate that level of internal power within your core, not to be mistaken for the desire for power. It's more so that you know that you can achieve and hold any which of these desires you want to. Going back to the baseline of your own potential within. Not letting your mind run like wild horses, really sinking into yourself. If you haven't done so already, begin to focus on your heart. And your heart is in the center of you, and it's in the center. It's barely to the left. It's really central. You want to go deeper than what you think. So we usually think of our heart and we're somewhere outside of our body, usually in the front of our body. Go all the way back toward behind the sternum, back toward the spine. Find your core. And as you find your core, keep breathing deep, full breath, making your breath rhythmic. Try to start to feel your heartbeat throughout the duration of your breath. It's part of the reason you need the breath to be so subtle. You want to be able to hear the echoes within the deepest chambers of your own being. And it takes this level of deep listening to know what your heart's desire is, to really know it. Not to just think it, but to feel it. You have to listen. listening with enough love that you're showing your heart you really want to understand, you really want to know. You really want to be in alignment with it, all the parts of yourself in alignment with the center of yourself. Can you dare to listen that deeply to your own heart? To let it lead you rather than have to follow the whims of your mind, making checklists of pros and cons, risks. Can you surrender to your deeper self, to the center of yourself? Can you listen that deeply? Can you follow your own heart? Now we're going to breathe in rhythm with our heartbeat. So there's a lot of options with that. You can, if you can hear your heartbeat, feel your heartbeat throughout the duration of your breath, you're just going to continue to do that. If you can't feel that, that's okay. It will show up for you over time with practice. One way to practice that is to place one hand over your heart, another hand around that wrist. You could also take a different pulse point, such as on your throat. So you're either listening to your actual heartbeat or the echo of your heartbeat, your pulse. And then you continue to breathe deep, full breath and feel your heartbeat or pulse with the entire duration of your breathing. One of my favorite sayings is, I consider myself second to none since I have realized within myself the one and only being. And this can help us, because to pursue and to hold our desires, it takes a great amount of self confidence. It takes a tremendous amount of subconscious awakening to your worthiness of these things, to your worthiness to become who you want to become and experience what you want to experience in your lifetime. The one lifetime that you get as you. And so to help us do that, on our heartbeat, we will add I am, I am, I am, I am, I am. And this I am may help you to realize the one and only being within your own heart. Aiming for 8 heartbeats in, 8 heartbeats out, but feeling that musically like you would dance with it and placing I am on every heartbeat. As you breathe your full life in and And as you give your full life out, anchored in the center of yourself as the waves of life moving through you are opened to their fullness. Anchoring yourself, I am, I am, I am. While allowing more and more life to live through you and be expressed through you on your breath. Now let me ask you, what is your heart's desire? Can you feel it? What is the myriad of your heart calling you to do, to become, to experience, to create through your own being? One more round of breath, placing I am on your heartbeat if you're not still doing so. And then when you're ready, move your body and open up your eyes.
Nice meditation. Thank you, Mia.
Thank you for being here with me so far.
Mm. Akbar Caduce is saying, new rule, hand position, left hand up, right hand down. Mm. Yes, you
Left
can
hand
do
up, right hand down.
left
Left
hand up,
hand.
right hand down. Yeah.
So receiving from the receptive side and then holding with the giving
Yeah.
side.
There is that, that's also an ancient posture. They that one is from it's like you see these Buddhists and I can't get both my hands on here for once. One hand is down and one is upright like this. And so yeah, that's an old one. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, the teaching is that the left hand is receptive and the right hand is active. Same for the sides of the body.
mm,
So kind of interesting, right? Like that we think about energy not just in terms of these elements, but also in terms of giving or receiving energy. We think about transforming energy. It's one of our skills that we're always working on in meditation, right? To
mm,
work with energy, to work with spirit.
mm.
So
Well, as
also
a tar,
what you said about the ujjayi breath and that's an exercise, but it's not good to keep that restriction in the throat. It's good to have the throat be unrestricted. um,
mhm,
there's so many breathing exercises and they all have value, but what you do with the breath has an effect, right? So if the breath is noisy, the Sufis talk about gross versus fine, right? um,
mhm,
in terms of refining energy, right? The breath is energy. So we want to refine that energy, right? And if we refine the breath, make it finer, and that means a couple of things, right? It means making it quiet. It means making it even in terms of its consistency, right? Not like rushing in and then tapering off, right? We want it to be a smooth, even flow, right? So there's so much that we can develop through the breath, and if we do this right, if we make the breath into this wonderful fine flow, it has tremendous power. So it's you know at least in my experience, right, it's well worth the effort of doing that.
mhm.
So
Asatar, I think we should meditate again right away.
yeah, all right, well, let's move into it then. Keep the energy going. So we've already got the vibe here, and we'll just keep it going. So return your attention to your breath. Find your posture. Remember the basics of heart rhythm meditation. We're seeking to make the breath deep, slow, rhythmic, heart centered, and full. We're starting by working with a deep breath, breathing into the belly and allowing the belly to expand. Breathing out and contracting the belly. So the belly gets bigger and smaller as you breathe. And working on slowing down the breathing so that each breath takes longer. You're breathing fewer breaths per minute, which slows down your rhythm, which slows down your energy, which gives you time to appreciate, to experience, to understand what is the energy of the inhalation, what is the energy of the exhalation, what am I experiencing here? Rhythmic and heart centered. We do by tuning into our hearts, by feeling that it is our hearts that are breathing. Our hearts take in energy as we breathe in, and our hearts give out energy, radiate energy, express energy as we breathe out. And to make the breath rhythmic, we count the beats of the heart and make the number of beats the same on the inhalation as it is on the exhalation. Now, this is challenging doing all these things, so if you can only do part of it, that's fine. A part of this practice has tremendous value. It may take you some time, some practice to do all these steps. You just do what you can and you say, I am good enough. The experience that I'm having is the experience that is right for me. I took my kids to see the Barbie movie, and Ken at one point wears a sweatshirt and it says, I am good enough. Good lesson for us all. Now, if you're working on this practice over time, if this practice appeals to you, I would like you to get to 8 beats in, 8 beats out. And the final step in this practice is to really make the breath full. When we start working with the full breath, that means we're not just doing deep breathing, we're starting with that. So we breathe in and we expand the belly, and we keep on expanding until we filled the chest as well, all the way up to the collarbone. And then it's very important to breathe out all the way. So empty, chest is going to contract, the ribs are going to contract, the intercostal muscles, the abdominal muscles, very, very important. Squeeze the abdominal muscles, squeeze your belly button toward your spine. And do that in a smooth, even pressure. When you breathe in, don't just relax that pressure all at once. The breath will become jagged. Control the breath on the inhalation. Your breath is energy you're giving yourself, incredibly powerful, sustained and smooth blast of energy here. As you breathe into your heart, you tune into your desires and consider the theme that we're working, the 5 desires. Think of the times you have been motivated by the desire to know, the desire to learn, the desire to understand, all different ways of saying the same thing. And then think of the times where you have the desire for power, the desire to do, the desire to achieve, the desire to break through obstacles. And what a particular kind of energy that has. Now, as you experience these different energies, pay attention to what you are feeling. Pay attention to what images you get. Pay attention to what are the sensations in your body. All of that has value. Pay attention even if you lose your focus. Pay attention to what your train of thought is. And if you find you have wandered, you note that and return your attention to the breath and to the theme of desire. And then consider the desire for happiness, for love, for joy. How wonderful that is. Consider that with every longing, for that longing to be there, for that desire to be there, that energy is already within you. You long for happiness, that happiness is within you. Let yourself experience it. Let yourself dive into it. Don't hold yourself back. And then we come to the desire for peace, the desire to have stability, to maintain, to endure over time. How wonderful that is, how beautiful that is. Have you ever been with someone who is really at peace within themselves? What a tonic to the spirit that is. And also what a different sort of energy from the one who has power. Breathe into your heart and feel what are the desires that you have. Consider these desires to be sacred. But remember, they are energy, and it is in the nature of energy to change, to shift, to transform. So while you consider these desires to be sacred, there may be some shifting and changing of the outer form. As you sit with your desires, dive deeply into them, you may notice that they become more refined. They become different in their, not in their fundamental character, perhaps, but they're different in their feeling. And this refinement is good. This refinement is necessary. Because we have to make choices in life, don't we? We have to make choices about which desires are we really going to work on. What desires are we really going to make real? It won't be every one, my friends. That's not how life is. You have to focus. And so learning to discriminate, to sense within yourself which are the desires that are really important to me, the ones that I must do, that I cannot do without. This is one thing that meditating on desire and in your heart can really help with. Meditation, we want to open ourselves to the infinite. So let's open ourselves to the idea that it is not just our desires. It is not just us here. The universe is desiring through you because desire is energy. And what is energy? Where does it come from? Energy is all around us. It is within us. It flows through us. Your desires are not just you. Breathe into your desire and feel the one being desiring. Have you ever thought, after all, why do we have these desires? Why are these desires so strong, so powerful? Why are we given far more desires than we could ever accomplish? What does it mean? To be human is to be filled with longing. Could it be that these desires and the energy that is beneath it, within it, through it, that this has something very deep, very powerful to teach us about who we are, about the nature of the universe itself, and about why we are here in this life. May the blessings of God rest upon you, and may you experience and achieve your desire.
Thank
Let's
you so
see.
much. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Asatar.
Yeah.
Mm.
We have a comment here. I wanted to comment earlier. Fifth element made me think while you were discussing as desire to be faithful to your agency, to be grateful in being, so to speak. Yeah, right. Very much so. I think that's in there. When we say the
Yeah.
desire to live, right? Um, what does that mean? When we say to live, um, gratitude is just one of these fundamental parts of it, right? Like when you really are experiencing that, right, like this, that sense of feeling alive, doesn't gratitude just so naturally come into it? You know,
Mm, mm,
I think it does.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm.
It's funny how when you really get into desire, um, you know, I feel in a way less bound by it. It's strange, like when you stay on the surface of it, you're like, ah, I want all these things, like this, right? And when you really dive into it, I mean, because this is what I felt like we did. I feel so much calmer, I mean, I feel
Me
in a
too.
way so much less bound by it. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, totally. It's like almost like I dropped into more of that feeling of a soul purpose than an outer
Yeah,
material need.
yeah.
Really beautiful. And I really also enjoyed how you talked about, discerning what is it actually.
We have to
Like you can only
recognize.
focus at one at a time, one thing
Yeah,
at a time.
right. What I mean, this is the thing. I think this is the curse of being talented at several things is, you know, you you have to make choices, right? But we all do, Where do we put our time, our energy, our money, right? All these things, these all play a role in terms of how are we moving? What are we moving towards?
Yeah.
So, well,
Hmm.
thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And if you'd like to support the show, please visit the Patreon link. If you're ever in Tucson, take a yoga class with Leah. Um,
Yes, Yoga
you should also
Oasis.
follow on Instagram. And
Thank you.
we will be back next week. So I hope you all can join us.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night.
Take care, everyone.